Good morning, everyone. Hope your day is off to a good start this morning. And at least it's morning where I am still. And today we're going to be looking at and working with Hawaiian quilting. I'm kind of excited about this. I really haven't done much Hawaiian quilting over the last few years. So it was a learning curve for me. We took a trip to Hawaii, my family and I happened to run across a beautiful little Hawaiian quilt shop. I wish I could remember the name of it, but I don't. And they were having a class that day, and I was able to take the class, and um, it wasn't a beginner class, it was more of an intermediate class, but I picked it up and I finished my project, so that was good. And I'm excited to share those things that I learned then with you today. But first, I want to share with you um, this picture of a Mola. We did that last week, and certainly this one was bought in Panama so that the Indian women, excuse me, or a woman had made this. This would take me a very long time to do, but isn't it beautiful? And just to get an idea of how they put these panels together, and then they make their tops and their clothing out of these beautiful molas. So thank you, Virginia, uh, or for putting that in. And then I want to share with you rice bags. This one was, I think, also from Virginia. If I've got that wrong, let me know. I sincerely apologize for that. But just beautiful. I'm so glad you guys were so excited about the rice bags, and she just did a beautiful job, and they hold so much. So if you haven't gotten on the bandwagon of making those, um, you'll need to do that. They're just very handy, and just a beautiful job. And the Sashiko stitching is wonderful as well. So thank you for sending in those images. I certainly appreciate seeing your work and how excited everyone has gotten over those kamabakuro or rice bags from Japan. And for those of you who are waiting for the new kits from the store, they were put out and they've already sold out again. So my suggestion is go to your stash and check out what you have and put together your own version of the rice bag. It's beautiful, it's handy. I'm gonna make a couple of more. I've got the two, the demo that I made, and then the one I made online with you, and they're already full. I've got projects in them, so I'm kind of excited about them too, because they do hold a lot, and it'd be a great way to store, kits that you're getting ready to work on or whatever. So, with that in mind, I want to get to the Hawaiian quilts today. And first of all, I want to go through and let you know what the supplies are for this. And as I work on it, I will tell you what I remember and what I know about Hawaiian quilting. First of all, again, it was kind of reinvented by the native women and men, I believe, in Hawaii, from the missionaries who brought this to the islands. And so the missionaries taught them a version or a type of applique from, the East Coast, that type of stuff that they were doing. And the women then adapted it to had to have an island flair and to make it worthwhile for them. And because their supplies were limited with the fabrics that they had and also the threads and needles that they had. So we'll get into some of that as we go. So let's drop down to my desk, and these are some of the things that you're going to need. I chose, I've got an array of scissors here because when we put together the pattern that we have, which is downloadable, by the way, so if you want a pattern, a Hawaiian pattern, please feel free to download that and use it. So I have my Karen K. Buckley, the small scissors and the larger scissors. Normally, I really like these for a lot of cutting and stuff, but we're going to be going through 8 layers of fabric. And so that's a little bit tough on the scissors, and this one does not work well. But what this worked well was for the trimming up, that there's a few places where I needed to trim. If you want to mark around your pattern and cut it out that way instead of pinning the pattern on and cutting it, then I have the sew line marker. You could certainly use a friction pen. You could use the Quilter Select air dry pen. So any, if that's the way you want to choose to put that on there. Then I have a large scissors, and this one I found cut through the 8 layers the best. Was my large fabric scissors. This one also worked well, and I'll probably start with this one and see how I do today because I like the serrated edge. If I can use a serrated edge for cutting, I will do that always because it keeps it from fraying and the fabric actually from moving around the pattern. So that was very helpful, I found. So then the Hawaiian women only had white thread. So if you were to see a vintage Hawaiian quilt, you would probably see that they did all of their applique with white thread and they did their quilting with white thread. And that was simply because that's what they had and, the solid colors for that. Then, but I'm going to be matching my thread to my fabric. And so I have from the Quilter Select ring, I chose a thread that came real close to matching my fabric. So, and also Superior Threads have those bobs filled with fabric too, depending on which colors you choose. Then you need needles. And again, needles to me are personal, and they reflect how you handle and hold a needle and what works best for you. But what I have found is that I like straw needles, and this is a number 11. And the straw needles are very sharp and they're very thin and move through the fabric really well. So when I applique, they're a little bit longer. The same thing with sharps. They too are a little bit longer and they're thin and they're very sharp. Obviously, they're follows their names. So straw needles or sharps work really well for me. On occasion, milliner's needles also work, and that is when I have to pull it through thicker thread. The milliner's needle is the same size from tip to eye, so that works well for it sliding through. Then I think I shared about these, and these are especially wonderful for I mostly use them for binding when I'm doing bindings with the tighter woven fabrics, and but they're also wonderful for the layers and the things that we're going to be doing here. And also this number 10 has a longer needle, and for me that works really good. And so they're considered applique sharps, and so they fit in with what I personally like for my applique. Then the last thing that I'll share with you is sew tights, and the sew tights come in handy both for holding the fabrics together for me when I've got some applique that I'm working on, and they're the magnet in these are so strong. I've got three, I got a round, I've got a short rectangle, and then there's also a larger one, but I'm not using it today. So I use them a lot when I do English paper piecing and that, but they're also a good needle holder, and the magnet on them is extremely strong. And one of the things that I find helpful for me when I'm on a roll is that I go ahead and thread 4 or 5 needles right away, and I use them on my magnet on the Sew Tight, because it holds them in place and keeps the threads neat, and they, for however it works, they line up nicely. So I've got the needles and the Sew Tights, or if you have another kind or a magnet that works, feel free to use those. So this is what, and then I chose these 2 colors from my kit, and they were 22 by 18. So I cut them down to an 18-inch square, which the pattern, when you get it, will look like this. And the Hawaiian quilters used 1/8 of a pattern to cut out. Sometimes you will find Hawaiian patterns that are 4. So you would cut it out when it's folded this, like this, into fourths. But this is 1/8, and the dotted line is what we're going to put on the folded sides, and I will walk through that with you on those steps. I'd like to show you also what the pattern looked like. This is much smaller, and this one actually fits a 10-inch square, and when the pattern came whole, Kristen was gracious and put it in to fit into size for a 10-inch because we had the layer cakes. It's a little bit more fiddly when you're doing it, but not so much. But I felt that a little bit bigger one would work well. If you use this one in the size that it is, you would need a 22-inch square. And so I had to break it down, and from this size, which was the original size, and I took it down 1 inch, which is about 87% pattern, to fit the 18-inch square. So this is the one that we'll be working with today. So if you copy the pattern and you have bought a kit and you want to use the large pieces of fabric, you will need to have it, decrease it to 87% on that. But this is what the pattern is going to look like when it's finished. I cut it out for the 10-inch, and so I'd like to show you what that looks like cut out. And on this particular one, I did not cut out the center. I just simply forgot it, but it still looks wonderful without the center cut out. It would make a circle in there. We'll cut it out on the larger pattern today, but if you decided that you didn't necessarily want to cut that center piece out, you certainly wouldn't have to on that. Before I work on getting everything set up, I would like to share with you that from that class in Hawaii, this pillow is what we made. It was a 3-day class, and obviously I didn't get it done in those 3 days, but I learned the process. And of course, the pineapples are very much, and this was considered a good pattern to work with because it had the curve that we're going to talk about, how to get that in. It had these little valleys in here, and it also had the points. So that's what the pattern today is going to do. And let me look and see if there's any questions real quick. And okay. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for showing up Um, oh, the Hawaiian quilt patterns from the 1930s. Kathleen, what a treasure you have. So hopefully you can make one of these. Um, okay, I don't see any questions right now, so let's I chose these particular fabrics because one of the things that they talked about in Hawaii, obviously, there's a lot more modern things going on. They use a lot of batiks, and you know, obviously things change and you use what you want to, but some of the original and the antique quilts that I saw while I was there often had tropical colors of fabric, and they were almost always solid because that's what they had. And so the other thing that I noticed with, tropical flowers and, the whole tropical idea was that they used a combination of both cool and um, warm colors. So I chose a warm color and a cool color from the pastels that were in the kit. So I'm going to work first with the this is the one that I'm going to make the pattern out of. I have folded it pretty well, and I not as well as I should have. But one of the things that you want to do is make sure that it's, lined up pretty well, and then press a crease in it on both sides of the folded sides. And then to get the pattern, we're going to fold it to the opposite corner. And again, I am going to press, keep that together. And press it. So here is where the pattern comes in. Let me grab it here. And all right. All right. I've just a moment here. Okay, I had a message come in. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something that I should have had. So I'm fitting the pattern onto, and as you fold this, in quarters, I don't think I didn't quite get that corner real good. So we'll see. I think it will be okay. I think it'll be fine. So again, I'm putting my and I want to pin this down so it holds itself in place. I don't want to put a lot of pins in because for one, they stick me, and two, they make it a little bit harder to cut around. So I'm gonna drop one in each of the, you know, the leaves that go in here. All right, so now I have my pattern onto my piece. And I'm going to start with my Karen K. Buckley scissors and start to work my way around that those 8 layers of fabric. As you can see, I have 2 and then the 4 on the bottom, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers. And this scissors certainly does the job, but it's also difficult to cut. But what I found is that when I'm going around these curves, that it was a little bit trickier. And this is where the smaller scissors will come in handy if you need to help trim that area. And I know that this must be somewhat painful for you to watch me cut. The other thing, this is kind of like those snowflakes, you know, you used to make in grade school. I remember my 4th grade teacher really loved this. So when the snow fell for the first time in the fall, she would have us make snowflakes and we would hang them in the windows. So as you can see, when I go around those curves, it gets a little bit tougher. And so find a pair of scissors that cuts well for you. That will make a big difference as you're cutting through 8 layers of fabric. Some of you may or may not have those cutting machines. I don't know if they have patterns with the, you know, those cutters that you could get a pattern cut from those. Wouldn't that be a lot nicer than having to cut around all this? All right, just that last little bit. I feel so awkward. I'm trying to help you be able to see this and cut around this. All right. So now we have the, see, that's why I forgot that first time. And I think right in here, I'm going to need to do a little bit of trimming. That didn't quite get cut correctly. Get rid of all of that. Let me make sure I've got everything cut the way it needs to be. All right. Now we can remove the pattern. And we also want to make sure that the other square is also, you know, pressed with the crease in, because that is going to help us line up the pattern. So I'm pressing a crease in two, and let me see if I have enough. I think I'm going to have enough room. All right. Let me move my iron out of the way. All right, I don't have quite enough room, but you can, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing well enough that you will be able to do it on your own. So I'm going to put this pattern at the fourth, you know, the eighth part of this. Then I will open this up and you'll see, you know, the quarter as it's coming around. And then we'll open it again and you'll get the half. Trying to make sure that I keep everything, you know, flat and straight. And I'll really line it up well as I get ready to. And so then this one, I want to open it. And you know, you need to make sure you keep right sides out if you're using a different fabric than a solid. I'm using the solid fabric, so it's not as crucial. All right, so I want to move this so that these pieces are pressed flat. And I've got this lump here, so I will go back and you know, redo a lot of this after on a very flat surface. I don't really have a flat surface here that I'm working with, but I want to make sure that and I didn't open that as carefully as I could have. So I've got my points lined up, and at least on this side everything is nice and flat, and so I'm going to be working in this quadrant here today with you. And so that's the pattern, and that's what it looks like out on your fabric. And so then the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to applique it down. Not really applique. I'm going to do a stitch. Last week we worked with the Mola, and we, you know, basted it down, and the basting with, you know, for the reverse applique helped hold it in place so that when we turned it underneath, we could see the fabric coming through. This time we're also going to baste, but this time the basting stitch is going to stay in because it is what we use to keep the fabric. It stops the fabric and keeps the pattern. So your basting is going to be pretty important as far as how you do it and the way you tackle the basting part of this process. So we want to go about a quarter of an inch away. All right. And so as we baste, and you really don't want to start at a point nor in a valley. We're gonna, and the same thing with the actual applique that we're gonna do. You really don't want to get into I'm going to move this needle here, because what I want to do is put, because I really do want to keep, and these magnets, by the way, are extremely strong, and I want to put one right in there to help hold it in place for me, so it doesn't move, and that'll help me with my basting. So I also will drop a needle in, but I really want it to be held tight, because what I found as I was doing that this week, and as I was practicing and trying to get up on my Hawaiian quilting, that so I'm going to work with this point coming down and working with the valley to show you how this is done. But first, I want to make sure that I don't have any questions. Yeah, there's some, let me see where I'm at. Traditionally, does it matter whether the cool color is the applique or the background? No, not really. I think I saw it more in the background, and that's why I chose it that way, because, the flowers were the brighter, colors, and the leaves and sky, kind of in the background, because they consider these the stems, the flowers, and so forth. On the reduction of that, open up your fabric. You need a square, and so the fabric that I had, it was a half a yard was cut, so it was 20, it was the 18 inches, but yet it was 22 inches in length. So because they cut a half yard in half to put into the kit. So I just cut it down to 18 inches. And the larger fabric will work for you. So that's, you don't have to reduce it unless you have a smaller square. And, that's what I was referring to. So just go ahead and cut the pattern as is and use it on your piece, and you should be just fine. I'm not sure, Vicky, could you, I'm not sure what you're asking there. Um, Staple the fabric in the areas that you're going to cut away, kind of like you do when you're cutting out a paper snowflake. You certainly could. I've seen people who do that. I was trying to be as authentic as I could to what I was taught with Hawaiian quilting, and I'm sure that the women did not have staples. So if that works and you can do that, please go right ahead and do it. Yeah, I have not on Mac Art. I have not seen that way done, but it certainly would work and make the cutting possibly easier. Um, Stick glue to attach the pattern to the fabric. Go right ahead. I think that would be great. I was just trying to stay as true to what I was taught. Um, um, And it looks like the cricket, you might be able to use that. So, and glue basting, possibly with that. And yes, Pauline, small drops of glue, and would certainly work there. And I would, probably do that with some of the rest of mine. And again, I always like the acorn, glue, because it dries, it washes out. It's all good. So let's get to basting the quilt. And I'm only going to baste a little bit. And so I'll go with the curve, and I'll come up, to a point so that you can see. And I'm going to start about a quarter of an inch away from the edge, and I'm going to be fairly careful about this basting. And they use longer stitches. I just tend to like to use a little bit smaller basting stitches, simply because it helps me with my turning under. And this is not my favorite form of applique. I will tell you that right now. I'm not a big needle turn appliquer. My method for appliquing is, the starch method. I love it. It works really well for me. And, some of the Hawaiian quilting that I've done since I worked on it in Hawaii with the ladies there, I have, I have done the starch method, applique. It's not true Hawaiian, but I feel like I still get the same, look that I do, when I look at it. Actually, I think, and I just totally messed that up somehow, because I'm one of those people who can't talk and walk at the same time. Chew gum and walk is nearly impossible. And see, I keep twisting that, and I'm not sure how I got that so twisted and how to untwist it. Let's see if I got it that time. I think I'm making it worse. Well, let's see if I can't just leave it alone and make it work. I don't know that that's really going to work, but we'll see what we can do. And I know that, I should probably just take it out and start over. And I'm taking a little bit of time with this because this is so important in terms of, how the end result's going to be, is how you know, how well you did in terms of, you know, basting it all. All right, I think that'll give me enough to show you the point and the curve in there. So I'm going to just take this to the back and knot it. I'm thinking. You know, have you ever had days where you just keep struggling? I think I've had 2 weeks of that. All right. So I can at least get rid of this one pin right here. And we're going to start with and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on this side so that we can get to the point, and hopefully the camera you'll be able to see. I'm going to just use the flat of my hand and go under here to hold it and scrunch up some of the fabric in there, and I'm going to let the knot lay under the fabric. And then with the needle turn, there, you know, on most of our applique, we go into these areas right here and we clip them. And at the point, we do some clipping and stuff. The Hawaiian quilters do not do that. They do not clip either way. And so I'm going to take and push that fabric, keep my thumb there, and then as I do that, I want to run my needle on the side and get that all turned under. And it's that basting thread that keeps and so I'm going to come back. I'm going to come up with my needle. I'm going to take a couple of stitches, and what I'm doing here with my stitches, I'm going under and getting both layers of fabric and coming up into kind of the fold. And I'm doing this slow because I want you to be able to see it. And let me make sure that I'm in the camera view. So I'm going under, and I'm using my thumb to help me keep my stitches at the size that I want. So now I'm going to go back up, and I'm going to keep moving that thread and sliding my needle underneath. And I'm going to use that thumb to kind of press my, my seam in so I get it. The right here is where I'm going to be turning at my point when I get there. So I'm going to hold my thumb in place, go under right next to where I came up. I'm going to keep my stitches fairly small. And if you've ever, watched a Hawaiian quilter quilt this, they go so fast. And by the time that you're done with this, you'll be a whole lot faster than I'm doing it right now. Going under, and now I'm going to come up where I want my point to be. All right, so I've come up right there. And now what I'm going to do with this point is I'm simply going to turn it under. Okay, so I'm going to go on this side. And I find that using my fingers to get it started helps a little bit more. So it's going straight across. I take my needle and push that under. And then again, I'm gonna take and run my needle down that until that's all tucked in on that point. And you'll notice that you know, some of the points on the Hawaiian quilts aren't, they're sharp, but they're a little bit different than when we do that. They've got a little bit more curve to it. So I'm fiddling here because I'm holding it a little bit awkward for me. So I'm pulling the string, my thread, and making sure that that's all under there. Then I'm taking a stitch right at that point, giving it a good tug to keep it the point there, and then I'm going to go down the side and continue that process. They don't clip anything, they don't cut anything away, they don't make any, you know, indentations in their stitching at all. And this was emphasized in that class that I took, that, you know, obviously things have changed since, you know, since those first missionaries and natives came to the islands and shared their, you know, their expertise. And see, I'm coming at this a little bit backwards. All right, so I'm going to press that down with my thumb. Come up. And I can usually get about 2 or 3 stitches before I, you know, turn the next section. Run my thumb along that just to keep it in place. Now I'm coming down into this mess I made. And I want to keep my hand underneath pretty flat. It definitely helps with the turning and the holding of the fabric so that I can get my, you know, my thumb in there. And I'm struggling today to get that needle so that the fabric folds in half. Because basically what you're doing is if you did your basting in 1/4 of an inch, you're folding it 1/4 of an inch under. All right, and when you come into, you know, this curve, you're going to even go a little bit less. It will fold under, and it will work beautifully for you. But you have to make sure that as you're coming into the curve, you're getting that 1/4 inch under, and you just take it slow through that curve, and we'll show you that the curves, there is no clipping necessary when you come in to the curve and do it this way. All right, so now it's probably just going to be like 2 or 3 stitches. So I can take probably, and I don't know why, but I feel better if I take smaller stitches in the curve. I don't think it's necessary. And just so that I can see a little bit better, I'm going to clip that. Okay, so I've come in, I'm going to do one more stitch into this circle. And this is where it gets tight, and we begin that process of clipping so that the curves will stay in there. And so as soon as I get to the bottom of this valley, then I'm going to go up and start up here and move my needle down. And as you can see, I didn't have to clip those curves at all. I'm just taking shorter, you know, I can only get 2 or 3 stitches in, maybe, 2 at the most, before I start that process of going around that curve. All right. So I've done a point for you, and I've gone around the curve, no clipping, and it just, takes time for you to move all around. And by the time you get your first leaf done, you've got the hang of it, and you're moving along, pretty well. And, Hawaiian quilting. And they make their own patterns. All right. Let's see. Let me just see where. Glue in the folds, go for it. The washable double-sided tape may work. All of those things are worth trying. Could you use the fabric glue to set it on instead of basting? I have never tried it. I would say it's all worth trying. Do you trim away the underneath fabric behind the design when you're finished? No. The edges are actually only turned 1/8 of an inch. That's about what they're turned, yes. Does the thread get hidden under the seam? Machine applique is quite noticeable. Yes, it does. If you get good at this, you really don't see your stitches on the top at all. And I don't know if I can get the camera, but you really, the light is weird. I don't know that you can see it on camera, but my stitches honestly do not show on the top at all. They are not showing. You can see the little pucker marks, but a good iron will take all of that away. Round wooden toothpicks help tuck the points and valleys under. It grips the threads in the fabric. Absolutely, the wooden toothpick does do that. And for those who are really good at needle turn applique, they make it look so easy. I just have to work at it a little bit. Would allow you to skip clipping. Glad I found that. Da, 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 da. I remember on the Mola applique, you basted the stitch, left it overnight, then it was easier to be turned under to the stitching line. I wonder if that technique would work for this. I'm guessing that it probably would, except that we're not taking the basting out with the Hawaiian applique. And so when I took it out, the memory of the holes where the stitching was helped me turn it right on those holes. We're not turning where I basted, we're turning out, and the basting is stopping the fabric from going any further in. So, I mean, it could probably help in some respect, but it's not as necessary as it was when I do regular, basting applique like needle turn, which I don't do often, but I do remember that leaving it in for reverse applique where you're turning right on that basting line. It's very helpful. Pins will leave rust marks in a very short time from the high humidity. Marking pins disappear with humidity. Basting is so key. You are exactly correct. And now that you say that, I do remember that they used, the pins, and they told us in class not to leave the pins in, to make sure to take the pins out and baste it right away. You can because of the basting stitches, that is correct. An eighth of an inch is all you would be turning under. To fray check the edges of those tight curves, I've never had to. I did that whole pineapple pillow I showed you, and I didn't use any fray. I didn't use anything but my needle and thread. Basting before needle turn, absolutely. My thread is probably about 18 inches long, but sometimes I get it longer, and then I run into the problems that I did on the curve. The basting stitch is about a 1/4 inch. I would say a good 1/4 inch from the edge of the fabric. You could make it bigger if the if the 1/8 inch turn is makes you worry about it. Go ahead and baste a little bit further in. Your pattern will be a little bit narrower, but that's not a problem. Does the basting stitch get taken out when the applique is complete? Yes, it does. All right. So thank you for the questions, and hopefully this will be fun for you. And again, this is what the final with the circle in the center will look like when it's completed. And this has gotten to be a mess here. I'm going to have to straighten that out on a flat and repin it. And I may try, the glue and stuff, but honestly, this works okay. And applique needles, those short ones, I don't have any because I don't necessarily do it that way. And so the long pins were a little bit tougher. It stayed in better when I, put it through the cloth twice there. This is fun. They make beautiful projects. I love my pillow. It pretty much sits on the chair in my living room. And the quilting with Hawaiian quilting is that they echo the pattern. And that's what she has done. She would be me. I, did the echo quilting because that is what their sample did. And I did the pineapple this way because it looked a little bit more like a pineapple. And the woman who was teaching the class had done hers that way. And at that point, I was going to definitely do it the same way that I had seen it done. And so this gave it that pineapple look. And but echo quilting. And then this was something she did for decorative reasons on the outside of the pillow, and she gave us a pattern for that to go around it. And so I had a pattern to cut this out, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily need, a pattern around it, but it just made the pillow for me. And I've had this pillow probably, 20 years. So this was in my early days of applique, and I can see my stitches on this one, whereas on this, I don't see my stitches at all. So it's good to know that I can still learn and grow. All right. Yeah, rewatching the class, all of that. We will be back next week with a similar, the Mola, the Hawaiian Quilting and the Tivaevae from the islands in the Pacific, closer to Australia, Japan, those where they do the Tivaevae. And they're very similar, but their differences are notable when you see the quilts. You can quickly identify the differences between, the Hawaiian quilting, obviously the Molas, where it's very intricate, and, going through the layers of fabric and the bright colors, with the Tivaevae, which looks very similar to Hawaiian quilting, but a few differences in how it's put together. And today I wanted to share with you the Hawaiian method that I had learned in a class from a Hawaiian lady, and that's why I do it this way, because when I'm finished, the look is very much what I would say that I saw of the Hawaiian quilts in Hawaii at that time. And if you are from Hawaii and please share, on the forum, anything that I may have forgotten from that. Because I love the look of a Hawaiian quilt, and some of their patterns are very large, and they, will get a whole quilt out of, one pattern, but you can create your own patterns, or find some. And Kristen has the one that we're using here today to download, and I think it's very pretty. It's going to make a beautiful pillow, and I can't wait to finish my second one for sure. So thank you for being here today. You really do honor me with your presence, and it's wonderful. Thank you. And I would look forward to seeing you next week, close to Mother's Day. So we'll see you then. Have a great one.